behind you is your authenticity grid, which has a lot of tools in it. So could you walk us through your authenticity grid and just reference reference the tools that you have put together in this?
The grid was a result of 30 years of research of human nature from personal, professional, and spiritual perspectives. The initial thing that I was trying to do was understand myself. I was 28 when I started this and realized I had done everything my parents said they do, and I was miserable. And I had become their version of who they thought a Black girl should be in America. And then I said, no, that's not who I am. Let me figure out who I am. And that's when I started the research. So it started with me identifying 9 energies that live within me. And I gave them each names of animals. And then in the process, I was researching astrology and a bunch of other stuff. This was my late 20s. I had just finished writing 10 years of poetry that was kind of flowing through me, telling me my destiny. I didn't understand it, but it was really going through me, and I just wrote them and set them aside. And then I went to the grid. And what I learned through the research and through the experiences is that we each have these 3 voices. We have an inner voice that no one hears but us. We have an outer voice, which is how other people perceive us, and an expressive voice, which is who we have become in the world. And then we have 3 dynamics that we call think, communicate, and do. Now that I learned when I was directing Head Start programs, which was my first job. I found that I did a lot of doing. I would hire people and have them do things before I explained to them why they were doing it. And that's when I learned everything is more effective if you first think about it, evaluate, strategize, plan, assess, and then communicate with yourself, with others, and the universe, and then do. Well, the think things that are on the top line represent things that were given to you at birth. And how do you deal with them? The things in the middle horizontal are how we communicate who we are to the world. And the things on the bottom horizontal are things that you do. So now going through each of the dimensions, the inner voice dimensions, the think is your intuition, the thoughts that come to you, the 6th sense. On the planet, it's the 5 senses, which is how we mainly communicate and how we perceive things. It's the 6th sense that's not well understood because the 6th sense can't be regulated. No one knows what, Rebecca, what your 6th sense says to you versus what it says to me. It's very private and very individual. And so that's the intuition and the importance of the 6th sense that's given to you of developing that and listening. The communicate on the inner voice is integrity, because you communicate to the world who you are by your values. What are your values and how are they communicating to the world? So that's an important part of who you are. And this is the part when I talk about this, I talk about how important it is to know your own values. As humans, we make 35,000 decisions every day. And the more you know your values, the faster you can make decisions and the more appropriate they are for you. The second thing that I mentioned is, can you think of one value that we as a society all share? And no one can think of one. People give me compassion or connectedness or all kinds of things, but nothing really fits like the human traffickers. They don't have any of those values. But I think that's one of the challenges on our planet is that we don't share one value. The evidence of that is Ukraine, when the war started, and Ukraine shared one value: you're not going to take our land. And they shared that value so tenaciously that they're still standing. It's amazing. Everybody wonders how they're beating and surviving with one giant as they are with Russia. But they are. And I think that's communicating their value and sharing that one value. And then the third is inspiration, which is the drive that you have. At the time that I did this, I had a speaker bureau. And so I contrasted the difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is coming from the outside in. Inspiration is the inside out. You can be motivated all your life, get all kinds of motivational speakers and listen to stuff, but if you're not internally inspired, you're not going to make a difference. And what I share with the inner voice is that it happens so quickly. You get a thought, you filter it through your values, and if it meets your value, then you may be inspired to deal with it. And with 35,000 decisions every day, this happens so fast. So part of what I teach people is how important it is to know yourself. When you know yourself in each of these 9 dimensions, your authenticity thrives and you have a lot more success in life and you're actually a lot happier. Now, the outer voice is how people perceive you. When you walk into a room, people make an immediate impression about who you are just by looking at you. And that's based on the 3 nets. And they're net because they're the sum total of first your wellness, secondly, your network, and third, your net wealth. So net wellness is on this think level because you're born with a certain amount of DNA. I know you specialize in DNA, Mr. Dr. Rebecca, DNA doctor. So we talk about holistic balance. I shared with you that I've had 13 surgeries. When I talk about this, I talk about that. And when I found out that I was really sick right before I turned 50, I had got a new job traveling and as a consultant. And every time I would travel, I would come home and I would get sick. So my immune system was messed up and I would walk. I had a walk that I did, took about an hour, and I would come back from that and get sick. So I did my research, and as I found a book in a bookstore, I just walked around and let spirit lead me. And I found a book that talked about antibiotics. I read it that night and learned that 40 years of taking antibiotics was taking a toll on me. I went and looked for a doctor. I was looking for a doctor who was naturopathic, non-medical, but who had medical training because I still had these ear problems. I needed someone that understood that on a deeper level. So I found one and I chose him because his receptionist asked me more questions than I asked her. So I knew she knew what she was talking about. And that was a homeopathic doctor. And that's when I spent the year getting homeopathic treatment and eating the yogurt and what have you. I tell people how important it is to monitor and watch your body. I was also eating a diet, an anti-cancer diet, because the women in my family had died of digestive cancers, 3 of them. So I figured I should eat like they eat. And then I found out the way that I was eating was causing kidney stones. My training and my teaching on that is you have to regularly monitor. When you get 60, your body tells you can't eat these things anymore. And when you get 70, your body says, now this is what might take you out if you're not careful. So you have to always be careful. And so that's why I'm adjusting and adjusting. So, and I advise people to balance between the holistic and the allopathic medicine. So you have the allopathic medical doctors are great for diagnostic, but since your body's not made of chemicals, why give it chemicals unless it's absolutely necessary? So the next one is network, and its relationships. I refer to it as your quality and quantity relationships. The quality meaning those people who know you very well. They know how you smell. They love you. No matter what you do, they're going to be honest and authentic with you. And the quantity are the numbers of people that you know that may not be your BFF, but you can reach out to them. You're happy to see them. Some of the ones I saw Saturday when I went to the conference, they're quantity network. And, you're always happy to see them. Now, we call it network because it has to do with the network that's a part of your people that are your quality and quantity. It has to do with networking and how you get out there in the world. It has to do with the net of your work. A lot of my work, I tell people to find the theme in your life. When you look at the net of your work, of the jobs you've had and the things you've done over your lifetime, you'll find a theme there somewhere. And it has to do with that. And it's in the middle of the grid. So everything in the grid touches network and touches people, which is a real critical part of our existence as human beings. And then the last one, the do, is net wealth. And you see the word abundance there. When I refer to net wealth, everywhere I go in the country, out of the country, and I ask them what does net wealth mean, they all say money. And what I say is it's abundance and joy. When I had my speaker bureau, I met a lot of speakers who made a lot of money, who were very well known, whose names, if I mentioned, you would know them, but who did not have abundance and did not have joy. So the answer is not money. The answer is abundance and joy. Of course, you need money to survive without a question, but society will make you believe, if you will accept it, that the more money you have, the happier you'll be. And that's not true. What I found with people, the more money you have, the more problems you have, and the more you worry about losing that money. So why not go with the joy and abundance route? That's a lot more pleasant and gives you a lot more enjoyment and less stress in life. So that's the outer voice. Now, authenticity starts in the inner voice, listening, and it's reinforced when your outer voice gives the same message as your inner voice. I know I've met a lot of people along the way who say one thing and mean another. It's like saying, I'm so happy. And you know good and well they're not, because they're not showing it. But you meet people like that. There's a disconnect and you can't figure it out. But true authenticity is when your expressive voice is also aligned with your outer and inner voice. And your expressive voice is who you have become in the world and how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. So the think part of that is your legacy. Legacy on our normal definition is what you leave to your heirs. But what we say legacy is an authenticity is what was given to you at birth, what God, your creator, gave you at the time of your birth. And we look at those in three different ways. One are your physical gifts. The body that you're in is a gift, the color of your skin, the type of hair you have, your height, your shoe size, the size of your nose, your eyes, your ears, all of that. If you look at it as a gift and discover how that gift can be used, think about someone again like Kobe Bryant, big tall guy who couldn't be a gymnast, right? His body was not right. And the gymnast Simone Biles couldn't be a basketball player. She's like 3 times the size of the height of a basketball. Wouldn't work. So what the body you're in has a lot to do with that. So don't try to carve it up and make it different. Enjoy it and make the best of it. The other gift and talent we talk about is spiritual gifts. And those go into speaking, signifying, and serving. So serving is like administrators and hospitality. Speaking is like what I'm doing now. We're preaching. And signifying is exorcisms and things of that, and a little more of the woo-woo side. So you can research those online, but the one that I talk a lot about is the what I call wisdom gifts, that are the multiple gifts of intelligence from the work of Dr. Howard Gardner, which I know you support as well, Rebecca. And what's interesting about Dr. Gardner's work, he has 9 gifts of intelligence that he identified and just published in 1983 to help teachers learn more about how to teach students, because they did everything the same rote way, memorize and regurgitate. And everybody doesn't learn that way. But when I did my research in the 80s about this, I had heard that there were 9 gifts, but I could only find 8, because the 9th one, society as a whole was withholding from us. Even now, if you Google Dr. Howard Gardner's multiple gifts, you'll get 8. And it's not unless you ask for the 9 that you get the 9th one, which is existential, which has to do with exoconsciousness, which they cannot deny now because so many children are being born who are crystal, indigo, and rainbow children who have these gifts, and you can't deny them. So it's more and more, and this is the third wave and on that Dolores Cannon talked about, of children that are coming to the planet who know their purpose and know what they're to do and know what their legacy is, and they know how to do it. These are the ones that I was born 30 years ahead of in order to help them understand it more. So that's the legacy dimension, which is one of my favorites because it has such richness in it and includes the existential part. The next one is likability. And likability has to do with your personality. We've had a lot of conversation on this with the people that I've trained. I had a guy who is very likable, but he said, Norma, I'm an introvert. So I don't have the personality that others do, but I'm very likable. So we've been pondering what word to substitute for personality. We've talked about rapport building. We've talked about empathy and compassion. I like connection is what someone mentioned. And someone else said it's what people say about you when you leave it. So you take your pick, but that's your likability. And that's how you communicate to the world also. And then the last one is lifestyle, which is your day-to-day habits. How do you live your life? And what habits can you tweak to make a difference in your life? What we ask people to do who end up reviewing this assessment is to find one thing in one dimension to tweak and try it on for 30 to 90 days and see how it might modify your life. Help you to be more authentic, help you to be more comfortable with yourself, be more confident, and that life flows more. And if you like it, continue it. If you don't, change it. But every 30 to 90 days or so, find something to tweak. Nothing big. Changing your life, becoming more authentic is not one fell swoop. You wake up next morning and all of a sudden, I'm authentic. No, it's changing one thing, tweaking one thing at a time. So what we encourage you to do is find one thing. It can be something easy. One thing I recommend is like how you drive back and forth to work. I work at home most of the time, but if I'm out in a crowd, I was out in a crowd once and it was a street where it took 5 lights to go 1 block. Now, that's just not in my religion, as some people say. It's not in my patience level. And I realized I could make a series of right and left turns and I get home with a more scenic route, I wouldn't have the impatience because I wasn't prepared to be on a speakerphone or be on a headset or something, listening to a book on tape or something to make that time beneficial for me. But I could be scenic and happy and make a series of right and left turns and I'd be home. And I did that. So you can tweak your life. You don't have to do the same thing. We get in this autopilot, being in routine, doing the same thing every day and not realizing that we have choices. So there are always choices. Options is one of my favorite words. I never like to be pushed back into a corner. I like to always have options so I can choose what's the best route for me. That's how I keep my peace level good, by making decisions about not getting myself boxed into a corner and always having options. So that's the grid. I think if you go to authenticityassessment.com, you can take my assessment that goes along with the grid. And I also have at giftfromnorma.com an invitation to participate in my Tuesday calls, which are free. The assessment is as well. But on the calls, you hear a speaker talk about one of the dimensions and give you some thought-provoking questions to reflect on your own life and connect you with your authenticity. So that's authenticityassessment.com and thegiftfromnorma.com.
Thank you so much, Norma. This is enlightening, and the multidimensional aspect of what you've created it's powerful. It is powerful. It's not living this flat life of, one-dimensional living. It's full of options and possibilities and things beyond our imagination even. So thank you for being with us and sharing all of your wisdom and your experiences. I mean, I think people look at you, people like you, Norma, and they think, oh, what a charmed life you've lived. And
yeah, right.
Yes, it was, but yes, it wasn't. It was very challenging, and to be silenced as a child and to not be understood. And I think that's one of the things that flows through the Exoconscious group is I can finally speak who I am.
Yes.
And claim it.
That's how I felt when I found the group and I started listening to what their stories were. And I said, I experienced that. I experienced that. I experienced that. Whoa, I experienced that too. But I never could put a name to it. And as I traveled, when I finished doing this grid, I had my bureau, internet had just started, and I had people all around the country who were connected with me. And that's when I went to 20 cities. I had different people that I had met host me. And what I learned is that everyone that I talked to saw themselves the same way. And that's when I learned that we're all multidimensional. And when I learned the term multidimensional, that's the angle that I'm taking as I begin to creep into what I'm going to be talking about in a few years, about the multidimensional aspects of all of us, helping us to realize that no one is single dimensional. And the effort, I think that the expressive voice is the one that there seems to be an effort to make us forget, to put us all in one box and make us be the same, make us be robots. We talk about 3-dimension versus 5-dimension. That conversation with exoconsciousness, I realized that my middle grid, my middle line, the outer voice that's a domain, actually. My middle domain is 3-dimensional. And when I finished writing this grid, when I was doing my speaker bureau, and I had finished the grid, but I hadn't finished, I was still in the study and the research part of it. I had seniors in the speaking industry who told me, Norma, you can't make money talking about intuition. If you don't talk about wellness, health, or relationships or money, you can't make any money. And then later I looked at, well, wow, that's the 3 dimensions that I have on my outer voice. So that's the 3-dimensional living that we talk about. It's related to that on the planet. And we're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13 dimension, all around us. But yet we stay with the 3 dimensions. And it's pretty much these three things that are somewhat tangible, that are somewhat controllable, that do not allow for a lot of creativity, but are really, governed in a box, so to speak. But who we are as human beings is not that way. We are multidimensional. And I have even taken this and built it up, lay it flat, and I can build it up like a pyramid to take you from a destiny perspective and I've even gone and looked at how it swirls. and how you can climb up in different ways. But my teen I was teaching didn't understand that. They weren't ready for it yet. So maybe I can understand it better in the next few years.
Please let us know the messages that are going to continue to come through for you. And thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.